it's working its way open, and it looks like it did let me choose today where I posted it.
See, thanks for looking up.
Okay.
Yeah, I love it when things work the way they're supposed to. I believe we're live, but let me make sure. So as people are gathering in, I'm going to just peek on my iPad over here and make sure that we are where we think we are.
All right.
This is Real Talk live stream Thursday noon. Hopefully people can grab a lunch and join us and listen in. I'm so excited today. We have our guests, Dr. Joe and Cindi Ferrini, and we're hoping to set this up so that, there it is. I see it. We're rolling. Good job. Okay. And you all look so good. We were just talking about all our gray hair, so we're all hoping that we'll be continuing to be able to show beautiful gray hair for many years to come.
And hopefully some wisdom to go behind it, right?
Right, exactly. Let's try for that. Well, we're rolling, and I haven't set up a watch party yet because I can't multitask quite that much, but maybe when you start sharing some introduction of yourselves, if I'm looking away, that's what I'm doing.
Okay, good.
Perfect.
Good.
Great. So today I just thank you everybody for joining us today. In fact, I will be watching the comments while I am listening to you to see if questions pop up. So I do invite everyone to ask questions if they want. This Real Talk, for those who have never joined us before, is just a space we're trying to create for families and marriages impacted by special needs, siblings of all ages, just extended family, even friends watch in and just kind of learn about what is it like to live inside this kind of a world that we have. And so we're trying to create a safe space for conversation. We're just, while we do interview folks like you who are book authors and speakers and so forth, we all realize we're just living life too and learning along the way. And for some reason, God has given a platform for us to share some of that, but none of us presumes to have all the answers, but we do know where to go to get them.
That's right.
We also realize that while we write books that tries to pull together from this some relevant things, that really we could chase all day long reading all kinds of really good books, legitimately great books.
Absolutely.
But ultimately, if we don't go to the source of the wisdom, we have nothing.
Absolutely.
So that's where we're just starting from that place today of genuine humility that sometimes we're vulnerable to pride too. I know all of us, but you guys are among some old friends we meet at conferences and things and share a lot of life in common. I appreciate you being here today, and just glad that we can be in a broader community sharing stories and reflecting on the challenges we face and learning with each other and anticipating the surprises of what God is going to do in our families. Great. So I'm Lisa Jameson. I'm a co-founder of Walk Right In Ministries, the host of Real Talk Livestream. My husband Larry and I have been married for 32 years, coming up on 33, and we have 3 daughters in their 20s. Our youngest is Carly, and she has Angelman syndrome. She lives at home with us. She's 22, and similar to the Ferrinis, we have 3 kids, but you have 2 girls and a boy. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourselves, and I'll listen. I know a little, so that allows me a space here to set up a watch.
Sounds
All right.
good.
Sounds good. Well, Joe and I have been married for 41 years, actually, 41. And so we have a track record of, things with our son. He will be soon to be 40 this summer, which, we can't believe it. And when we tease him, we'll say, like, how old are you going to be? And he'll be 40. I'm going to be 40. And we're like, you are not allowed to say that. But, he's such an honest soul that he's like, Mom, no. So he's our oldest, and he has special needs. He has cerebral palsy. He has epilepsy, which is well controlled now with medicine. So he's ongoing with medicine all the time, but he's doing great. Mentally slow. His verbal skills are very low, but he gets his point across quite well. His reading abilities are about a second, third grade level, which is very helpful to be able to read signs like danger or stop or
Oh, yes.
those kinds of things. So he has the ability, and he has enough of the understanding of those kinds of things to be able to listen. Do you want to add anything to that? Because I usually miss something. He's 6'4". I consider that a disability.
That can be a disability at times.
Oh my goodness, I did not realize he's that tall, and neither of you are that tall.
No.
No.
But on his side of the family, he had a brother who was pretty tall.
Yeah, no, that's good. Yeah, Cindy pretty much covered it, the
Right.
main
Did I miss
basics, I
anything?
think. We knew each other in high school, but we dated other people and we became engaged to those people and broke off those engagements,
And then remet.
and then we re-met a few years after that. And it was like God made it real clear that this was the one for me. And you know, we have been moving forward on our journey, and Joey was our first adventure into this world of special needs. And we never had any practical hands-on experience in dealing with special needs, but we do now. And so what we've learned over the years are opportunities to share with other people so that they can be helped along their journey as well.
Sure.
So
And we also have two girls. Our daughter Christina is 36, and she has two sons, and they are 11 and 8, so our grandsons, and then they're foster caring, and they have two little girls. And then our youngest has a 15-month-old boy and another boy on his way any minute. So
Any
if this
second.
rings and we have to go, but so far so good. But so, and the girls have they've been wonderful. They love their brother. Don't get me wrong, though, they've had their moments like we all have.
Sure.
And siblings don't always get along, and maybe we'll branch off to that at some point, but they love their brother, are very protective of him and caring of him. So we're very blessed in that way, you know, because it's can be very difficult, but we're appreciative. The family has really rallied around Joey and with Joey, and I think our family would look far different without Joey. And we're very pleased that God gave him to us, even though not every day is perfect. You know, you began by saying just that being, you know, we're families that just were coming here with humility. And anytime that you think you're going to have a moment of pride, there will be something that will humble you. Whether it's, you know, that you got mad at your child, or you got mad at your spouse, or you think everything's going just fine, and then you know, you're humbled. But I always think, you know, we never know when we have a child, we never know how it will bring out the best of us, and also how it will bring out the worst of us. And, you know, we've had Joey at home now for almost 40 years. And that wasn't part of the plan when we first got married. You know, we thought we'd be in retirement, empty nesting, and doing other things. And not that I mean, we're limited, but we don't just sit around either. We're pretty busy people. And Joey is able to be with us. We can also leave him for a short time if we want to go out and get a bite to eat, or if we want to run a quick errand. Sometimes he doesn't want to go and he's able to be home, but we always have to kind of have things set in a way that he's fed, he's gone to the bathroom, he doesn't need too much, and he can be home for a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, not for a day or anything, but he could be home for a bit. So we think we have it good, you know, but it's still a challenge.
Yeah.
We recognize
hard
him.
to explain that to people, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, we don't want to come across as flippant in any way at all. I mean, when we say that Joey is a blessing, I mean, we recognize him as a blessing from God, but it wasn't always that way. And I think that's part of the journey that was hardest for me, was early on. I mean, on my blueprint has what I thought life was going to be like for us. It did not include a special needs son.
Mhm.
I mean, all my life growing up, sports was what I did is what I love doing. And so I'm thinking, well, once I found out we were going to have a boy, I thought automatically things were clicking off in my head, like, okay, we're going to play catch, we're going to be a coach, we're going to do, you know, this and that. Then all of a sudden, all those things came crashing down on us within a few months when the doctors told us that Joey had cerebral palsy, and a year later found out that he was mentally retarded, found out a year after that he had epilepsy. I mean, at that point in time, the blueprint that we came into this marriage game with was thrown out, and we had to begin to find that new normal. And transitioning into a new normal is not easy. At least it wasn't easy for me. I'll just be transparent with you on that one. I think Cindi transitioned much nicer, easier than I did, although it was difficult for both of us. But I think, you know, it took a while for me to really engage and being all that I needed to be for my son, and in addition to that, for my wife as well. And so.
Joe, what do you think? What do you think helped you make that transition? What are the factors that influenced your process?
Yeah, good question. And I think we do address that a lot in our books that we've written on this topic. But I remember there was a time, and this was probably the pivotal moment to answer your question for me, was Joey was very sick. When he was younger, he would get sick a lot. And for Joey, whenever he would spike in a fever, he would, you know, roll right into a grand mal seizure. And it was not unusual for Joey to have a grand mal seizure 1 or 2 an hour whenever he was sick. I mean, I think his record is 37, or is it 39? We lose track. Grand mal seizures in one day. And that's in addition to many petit mal seizures. And I remember the one time, I mean, we thought he had spinal meningitis. So we rushed him to the hospital. He was basically semi-unconscious there. And now we see a tube hooked up to him in the emergency room. And the doctors basically said we have to do a spinal tap on him. And you know the routine, what happens at those points, right? And so it's about 2 weeks goes by. And after that 2-week period, thankfully, as things happen, things calm down, and you get to decompress, and you get to debrief, and you get to say, you know, what was that about? But it was at that time, my father-in-law, Cindy's dad, who was not, if you will, a religious guy. We went fishing, and they had a nice little stock pond on their property. And so we went fishing, and Joey liked to fish too, but at this time was just me and him. And he turned to me and said, you know, Joe, one of these days you're going to realize that joy is a blessing. And I had to tell him, you know what? I just don't see it. I don't see it right now. I can't see it happening. I don't get it. And he just, he was this, you know, this man that just was able to speak into my life. And I was at that point, I began to realize that, you know, he's coming from a background of, if you will, not having a Christian foundation in his life, but yet he was able to speak truth into my life. And it helped me to realize I better get my act together on this thing. And it really began to cause me to begin to move in an area where, to realize if I'm going to engage in my son's life, I need to get into his life. I need to begin to understand his world better. And as I began to understand his world, it was a slow process, but I began to realize that I had to make some major adjustments. And the person who had to change at this point wasn't my son, because he couldn't. I was the one that's going to have to change on this thing. And so it was me. I mean, Cindi was already ahead of me on this one. And
did that create any tension for you guys, that you weren't really in the same place yet with your grief and just processing what it was all going to mean?
Yeah, I mean, I tried not to let that be an issue as much as possible. But, you know, in my mind, I mean, of course, that's where the battle's at. I mean, the battle is with the mind. And so fortunately for me, in my world, I had a full-time practice. I'm a dentist by profession. And so I was able to escape into my world. And I mean, it's a pretty busy world naturally, but it just, you could get busier real quick if you want it to be. And so that was my escape. And so in essence, you know, when we speak for Family Life Ministries, and we take the time at the beginning of our conferences, and we talk about the different types of affairs that people can have. Of course, the obvious one is physical affairs, which was not an issue for us. But another type of an affair is an extramarital affair is what? A career affair. So I was having this affair, if you will, with just staying busy. And so that was my escape that I took off to. But as I saw Cindi, and I would come home, and she was, I can tell, you know, you get beat up, as you know, when you have a special needs child. It's rough. It's a rough world. And I began to realize I need to not just be there for my son, but I need to be there for my wife. And so that too was a process, but I think she can talk better from her perspective.
You know, he often, when he shares this, and I can understand that his mind was in a different place, but I never felt like he was neglecting me or our family. You know, he was busy at the office, but it wasn't like he was there from 7 till 7 at night. I mean, he was there normal business hours, and he worked hard, but you know, he was good at, even at work, he would leave his work at work. When he was done with his patients, he would do all the charts and do everything then, and then come home. He didn't bring all that stuff home with him. So I think when he left home, he didn't take that with him either. You know, so I think you know, men are good at compartmentalizing things. And so, you know, I didn't even realize what was probably happening in his own mind, but I never felt neglected. I never, you know, he was a good dad, always a good dad, good husband. So I never felt that way, but you know, he knows what he was thinking. And so he made those changes, and I'm sure those changes helped all of us in terms of as a family, because even our one daughter one time had made comment like, when will I see you next? Because his office hours were all different. And he looks at it as, I was never home as much as I should be. And I look at it as, well, you didn't have a 9-to-5 job. So one day you worked late, the next day you went early, the next day you stayed late. So it was just kind of weird. I don't think the girls, we've never really asked them, but we could. I don't think they would feel like they were neglected or deprived at all. But then,
well, especially when they're young, they don't know any different. You know,
Yes.
you start to get a little older, hang out at friends' houses and see, oh, their dad has a different kind of work. Their mom has a different routine than my mom.
Yeah,
And,
exactly.
oh, I wish my dad had that routine. Or
Yeah.
you know,
I don't think,
they're
they
having different perspectives.
exactly. So I think Christina might have been about 10, maybe 8 or 10.
Oh, she was little.
5
okay,
or
I
6.
don't remember. Yeah. You want to tell her? You want me to tell her?
Go ahead.
I'll tell her. Okay, so that was my one of my threshold points or transition times with my conversation with my father-in-law. But the other time that was really kind of put me over the edge was when my Christina, who we think was 5 years old at the time, which meant Joey was around 7 at the time. You know, and Monday I would leave for work just after lunch, and she said to me, as she always would do, as they all would do, is, you know, she'd give me a hug and kiss and say, well, Daddy, will I see you tonight, or will I see you tomorrow, or will I see you the day after that? And it was kind of like, whoa.
Yeah, it really impacted him to recognize that they didn't know when he was going to be home. Now, I knew his schedule. It didn't affect me like that. But when he heard her say those words, he made a change, you know. And that's the one thing I think, you know, because we do speak on marriage, I think if there's one thing that is so important, no matter whether you're married with kids or not, or special needs kids or not, is being willing to make changes in your marriage, because no matter what you're doing, it impacts the other person.
Right.
You know, so even if, you know, if he says, I don't like this habit of yours, Cindi, or I say, I don't like this habit of yours, Joe, we try to work on that so it's not irritating to the other person. You try to do as much as you can to make this marriage the best that you can. And so a lot of times, you know, your kids will speak into your your marriage, even when you're not expecting them to. And that was one of those
Yeah.
moments, I think.
I mean, we all have blind spots.
Yeah,
We all have
I
blind
give you
spots.
a lot of credit though for, it's not uncommon for any parent, dad or mom, to get a little bit weighed down by the guilt of that and kind of get so stuck in that we can't just hear the heart of what's being said. She didn't say it with blame, even if you felt, they're just genuinely asking a question.
That's right.
And under that, there's a need. And that need, they don't even necessarily know at that young age how to articulate, but as a parent, we hear that. And then we can kind of recoil almost in our grief. And instead, I just appreciate how you just listened to it and allowed it to shape your next steps in a positive way. And I think really you translate that really well to your marriage too. I think that's one of the reasons. I haven't shown your book yet, but your most recent book, Love Always, does a wonderful job, just even when you're not overtly saying it, there's this sense of really open heart, open communication in the way that you write about this that I think is so, from an outsider perspective, so evident and such something to be admired and something for us to try to model in our own lives. That freedom to be able to just say, this is hard for me in our marriage. Let's agree to work on that, instead of being defensive or taking it as you're trying to shame and blame me, or I feel too guilty about that. Whether you wanted me to feel that way or not, that's how I feel. And we just get kind of inadvertently narcissistic, if you will, in marriage.
Yeah.
And I think that's the enemy. I don't think that's the way it needs to be. And that pattern then perpetuates a distance and a silence. You guys, because you've learned to do that so much better, that's another reason you're asked to speak at places like Family Life. But I appreciate sharing that.
Thank you. And thank you for saying that. And I will say too, for people who are listening thinking we've arrived, we haven't. And we're always learning. We're always learning, whether it's through our kids or through each other or other people. We're always learning. Our marriage is a work in progress. I would like to share one other quick story, because while I think it's important that we have open communication, it's really important to do that with our children as well. And maybe as people will listen when we're finished with this broadcast here, and you'll do, it'll go out on the webs and podcasts, whatever you throw this place, this stuff. It's important that people realize they need to have close communication with their children too. And one of the things we've always said to our girls, and Joey too, but he can't express himself the way they can. Like, if you have a concern, come and talk to us. We anytime. So this one time, and we were doing this over and over, we would, Joe's parents would take Joey for the day or whatever, and we would take the girls and we would go on our adventure. And, he loved being there, and we loved being able to take them to do things that Joey couldn't do, like a bike ride. I mean, we didn't have to be like expensive big things, but even roller skating or something, that he could not do. And this one day we're driving, and Kathleen, she's our youngest, and she's sort of the funny one. She goes, Mom and Dad, she goes, I think that you love Joey more than you love Christina and I. And we're like, well, why would you say that? Now, first of all, you have to have open communication to be able to express that and not be like I can't say that to my mom and dad, So he goes, well, why would you think that? And they said, because Joey gets to go and be with Grandpa and Grandma, and we're with you. And we're thinking we're doing such a good thing. And no. So we explained it. The reason we're taking you. Now, one time we did take the girls on a trip, and that because Joey could never have made this trip. And I think it's really a trip that they really remember because of this reason, because he could never have done what we did. And it was really fun. But now, as we, they're all grown up and everything, we're so glad we had that open communication, because that just then reframed things. So we said, well, how about the next time we'll take Joey and you girls go stay with grandpa and grandma. And they loved it. And it wasn't that they
You
didn't.
kids just go find something to do and we'll take a nap at grandma and grandpa's house.
So it just, our frame of reference was to concentrate on them. They weren't thinking that. So it was good that they expressed it and that we listened and then that we acted upon it. That's the key there too. Like you said, next step. What's your next step?
Yeah. And one other story that goes right with that one, and is that because we were so involved with not just in the secular world doing dentistry or whatever, but we were doing a lot of ministry things as well, and traveling a lot and speaking and other things. And so we would have regular family meetings, which is one of the things we would encourage folks to consider doing.
Just short little 15-minute meetings.
Yeah, this is not, we're not talking about a docket of content here, but what we're talking about is just voicing your concerns or opinions that you might have. And so a question we would ask many times, and Cindi would ask the question is, are we spending enough time with you? Or are we away from home too much? And that just kind of opened the door for them to voice their concerns or opinions. And thankfully, usually the answer we got back was, you're spending way too much time with us, go away. And
yeah.
And then we were fine with that.
Yeah.
We just wanted to make sure that from their perspective, we were addressing real needs and issues that they had.
Yeah, because there's nothing like ministering to 500 couples in a ballroom and you're neglecting your family at home. That
Right.
We did not want that.
Right.
And that was important that we wanted them to know that. And they were always wanting us to do this, and were happy for us to do it. And not now as young ladies, when they first got married, they came to a marriage conference when they were dating, and then the same conference, but later when they were engaged, and the same conference later when they were married. And then they got to see not only what we did, but it pertained to them, and they could see how different it was from just a dating to an engaged to a marriage relationship. So they really learned from that as well.
One of the things we know from research about families impacted by disability is that, and especially talking to special siblings, is that one thing that really matters to them is to feel that their family is secure. And, on some fundamental level, that means that their parents' marriage is secure too. But even if it's not, it's very important for them to know that there's an anchoring parenthood over them, that their family, the love they have together, however they live, really matters to them. And I really believe that a lot of that security, hopefully under a marriage, an intact marriage, comes from this safety you're talking about and this openness of communication. And it's hard work to cultivate that, but truly, if we want to have our marriages survive, if we want our children to grow up in that, we can make a lot of mistakes. We can have a lot of weaknesses as parents, but if some of these core things like this openness and this communication that's clear and honest is there, you can afford to make a lot of other errors that you'll recover well from.
Right.
But that's such a big one.
Yeah, sure. I agree.
Well said. We tell folks all the time that the best investment you can make in your children's lives is this long-term stable marriage relationship. That will build all those things you just said, and it does cover a multitude of sins. So yeah.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that too, in the sense that while we're imperfect families, you actually do have a pretty well-oiled machine there that involves quite a community of extended family and daughters who've grown up marrying men who are very willing to be involved too. And since today, I think that's why, in addition to just having another great book available, this Love Always is available everywhere. You guys know you're well enough along in all of this to have some great wisdom about how to live multi-generationally in a family that's not enmeshed in the negative sense, but is very supportive, and even daughters who have married men who want to be part of that system. And you all have, I believe, from what I perceive, is this freedom. You know, you're not dependent on each other in a emotional, spiritual sense that's not healthy, but you're interconnected and very supportive of one another. And that's what's allowing you to have anything close to the semblance of retirement you hoped for, Joe, I'm sure. And so that's why, in a way, I wanted our talk today to be about how do we build a loving legacy in our family, because you guys, to me, are a great model for doing that, because it's not just loving always, and this ring is from a family member in generations back, but it's this implication that you're engaging the generations of your family and being really intentional about creating community around Joey, around your marriage, around your daughters, so they have community as they step more and more into a role of support with Joey. So tell us a little bit about that, because that's a huge legacy builder right there. Not only does it serve your whole family in a really practical way, but it is modeling in a really winsome way a legacy of love that really ultimately is found in Christ.
Thank
beautiful.
you. Yeah, that's nice how you said
You
that.
can start. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, you know, let me just go way back. And I remember my mom telling me a story even before Joey was born, maybe even before we got married. I don't remember when, that she had dated someone before she met my father who had a special needs sibling. And that she really thought back then that she didn't really want to marry this person because she did not know how would she be able to someday take care of that special needs person. She didn't have, my mom was not a real confident person, but she was a very loving person. But she did not continue dating that person because of the sibling that was special needs. And I found it interesting because I remembered that when Joey was born and diagnosed, like, I wonder how this is going to impact her, you know, with that in her past. Well, my parents and Joe's parents were very loving, very caring, very helpful. We could not have established the kind of ministry things that we did without their help. They were as much a part of our ministry as we were, because they helped with the children. They helped with so many things. But
I hear that, because I couldn't do what we do without, a team.
yes, it's
Totally right.
it's a team effort.
Right.
And yet, I mean, we know some people who would, even if they had children, their children had special needs children, they're not even involved that much with their own kids' lives, let alone involve themselves with the next generation. So some of it is, it was from our parents. Really, our parents loved us. They cared for us. They helped us. We could always come home if we needed to, that kind of thing. And so that was our start. But then even for us with our children, Christina, she was about 12 years old, and she asked, and this kind of goes to the security issue. She asked me one day, we were having lunch and we had some friends who had recently divorced, and I could see her mind kind of working, and she said, so what happens someday when you and Dad, like if one of you die, what's going to happen with Joey? Now, as a special need parent, those who will get to listen to this, you've had that thought and you've been thinking about it, and your kids hopefully don't have to have that on their mind, And so I was already kind of ready for this answer, but she said, what will you do? And I just said to her, honey, you do not have to worry about it, because we have everything in place and taken care of. Should we both die at the same time, we have things in place that you don't have to at 12 years old be worried about that. And she said to me, well, I just want you to know that I would take care of Joey. And I said to her, I go, but you know what? You don't know who you're going to marry. You don't know if that person will love Joey or want Joey. And so I don't want you to think about it. And I really didn't even want, knowing my mom's story, I didn't want someone to come into the family and think, oh, gosh, what am I going to get stuck with? Because that's what some people will think. We know that.
Sure.
And
it's the unspoken.
It's the unspoken, right. So we've had conversations over the years, and when the one thing that was her response with that is she said, well, if the person I was going to marry didn't love Joey, why would I marry him? And I thought, out of a 12-year-old
Yeah.
that came. Well, her husband loves Joey, takes, at times when he stays there, plays games with them, and they all know his routine. They know his quirks. So we've got it made. But the same thing with Kathleen. I mean, her husband loves Joey too. And we have a really sweet picture of all of us went to a Christmas concert, and Joey was sitting next to Kathleen's husband, Nathan, and he reached over and took Nathan's hand and just held his hand for like the longest time. Joey's not thinking about what that looks like.
Right.
And Nathan didn't budge. And we all were just like, oh my gosh, like this is like an answer to prayer, isn't it?
Yeah.
To have such love between them, and nobody cared that Joey took his hand and Nathan didn't, feel weird about it. He just loves Joey. So those things, I think, come when your purpose is in your family to show love, to show kindness, to perpetuate that. And yet I told my girls too, like, if Joey hits you, stand up for yourself, and we have to balance it too. And so I feel like that was our goal. Our goal was to incorporate this kind of thing. You might also be referring to, I have two sisters, and one sister is single, never been married, and COVID has changed things a lot in terms of, we haven't really seen her for almost a year because
I've been wondering about that. We haven't chatted for a while.
Yes. So that has really changed things. And, she hasn't really left her home. And there was a time she said I would be ready to take Joey, but I was like, I'm not going to do that because we're more out than you are. And if something happens and he brings something, like we would not live with ourselves if something happened. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's been hard. We haven't really gone anywhere. And if we do, we take him. That can be difficult too. So we had, my sister Sue is who I'm referring to, and she's just been a great help. And we miss that, and hopefully she misses it too, because we're all missing relationship right now with friends and family and things like that. And so that whole economy, if you will, of what you just described with our family, I think it takes work. It just takes work of caring and loving and speaking up, but not speaking out in a way that's hurtful. And then when it is, you apologize. I mean, it all takes that biblical effort, if you will, of how to have relationship and have good relationship.
Let's pause there for a minute, because I think something you just touched on is so important. As parents and in our marriages, we make mistakes, and we're sinful, or we're just weak. And yet we so often forget that with our kids, with our spouse, we can simply repent, apologize, confess that we'll try to do better, and then try to reset and restart, right?
Right.
I don't know why we skip over that. Like, instead we just sort of distance ourselves so often, feeling
sometimes that's easier,
inferior, insufficient, and kind of hide out, right? And if you're a dad, for example, with a job, or even a mom, we then can retreat into our careers, into our ministry work, all good things, but misused sometimes.
Sure. Or activities, I love people, I love projects. I could have, and I will always love doing projects. So, but I could have let that take over what was important to me with people. Mm-hmm. And so I think it's knowing your priorities. What are your priorities? Take some time and sit down and write them out.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and knowing ourselves. We go in the ministry that I do in counseling and caregiver consulting. We talk a lot about Psalm 139 and how our soul knows that God has uniquely woven each one of us, not just anatomically, but in our mind, in our heart. And we each have different needs and different degrees of need. Not everybody needs as much socialization. There are some people out there, believe it or not, who love COVID for the reason that it sort of clears their platter and they can give themselves permission without guilt to just stay home, So understanding that God uniquely created us, and then ask him, examine my heart, know my thoughts, see if there's a wicked way in me, and lead me to the way of everlasting.
Right.
So, that sort of that, even the 12-step process is
Right,
about making amends, going to someone and
right.
not expecting them to respond in any way, just doing what our part is to do. And if that
Sure.
is to repent and say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake, or I hurt you, I didn't mean to, but I did. And I acknowledge that, and I'll try to do better.
Sure.
Those kind of words are so powerful in a marriage, aren't they?
Yes.
Absolutely.
And between siblings and, between, parents, grandparents, all over, work people, neighbors, it goes on and on. It's every relationship. But I also think that it's really important, not doing this is good when we have erred or sinned, but I think there's also a way that we can do things proactive ahead of time, and proactive, that will help it. And I will give you one quick example. We went to our daughter Kathleen's, who's having a baby, anytime now. And we wanted to get the rundown for her other child, where everything is, because we go and help and take care, but we're going to be there a couple of days. So where is everything? What's his quirks? What is he like that we might not see when we're just helping for a couple of hours or a day? And one of the last things she said was, we were in the family room, and there's like a little room off the family room that has toys. And she goes, one thing that would be really important to me is when I tell you I'm coming home, if this room could be clean and not have toys all over it. She goes, I think it would help my anxiety level. And we're pretty clean. So when we go to bed, everything's in order at our house. And when the kids were really little, like, we'd throw stuff against the wall in case we had an emergency so we could get out. But I get what she's saying. And she's not.
Other families don't think that way.
Yeah.
Let's throw the toys in the wall in case we have to get out.
We do.
You get it. And other listeners are getting it too.
Absolutely do.
But and so that was how we did it. But I get her thinking. So I was appreciative. We said it when we got in the car. I said, that was a gift of words right there. That when she comes in and we know she's coming, we can have the 15-month-old with us at the door, and the house is clean. And even if one of us is back there still cleaning up, we will do what she needs because we care that much about her and her request. And so we will do that.
Well,
And
she's
that will
very
help.
blessed to have parents who are attentive to that. But I think that we all can learn from Kathleen in that too, and that kind of self-awareness, and that is, and asking the Lord, show me what I need, and show me how to communicate that with respect and humility, and then hold it loosely.
Yes.
Because
absolutely.
we can't always have all of our needs and wishes,
Right.
but they're important. And
Sure.
being able to have enough self-awareness to know what is really most important. What would be one thing that would really help me to have less anxiety today, for example? And how can I communicate that to those I love without putting a burden of obligation on them, but just communicating and giving them the opportunity to love me, because we want to usually love each other in our families.
Right.
And we can guess all day long about what we think based on some education and history, what will show them love. I have a servant-hearted husband who knows how to guess a lot of my needs, and with a child who's nonverbal, we do a lot of nonverbal communication, and we've learned to be intuitive, and he does a marvelous job. But you know what? He can't read my mind. And there are times when I can feel a root of bitterness growing in me because he's not meeting a need. And then I have to stop and think, but I didn't ever really tell him. And I don't have to tell him in a way that shames him or makes him feel obligated. And I mean, I say that like I know it, but I'm just actually learning that in the last couple of years. And I too, like you, learned it from one of my kids.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
who was really, she's been part of the National Sibling Leadership Network. She's becoming more involved in that. And one of the things she's learning from listening to other adult siblings, is how much they appreciate when they're invited in to their parents' world, like in our situation, yours, where we still have the adult special needs sibling living at home, but the other kids are out on their own. They want to be invited into our world and participate in certain aspects of that, and even invited into the opportunity to learn what does it take for you to care for Carly these days? Because if I ever did need to intervene, short or long term, I want to not have it all just dumped on me all at once. But they don't want the obligation of feeling that. So just a quick example that my daughter Alex shared a couple years ago was, she said, Mom, when you have appointments for Carly with her neurologist for her seizure management, or her OBGYN, because we're dealing with some young women issues, things, I would love to know when those are, because if you're okay, I might come sometime. And especially nowadays when it's virtual, it's easier than ever. She said, I really can't, I don't want to feel pressure. Like she actually is somebody who can quickly feel a pressure. And I think I have contributed to that at times inadvertently. But she said, as long as I know that I'm welcome, but not obligated, that allows me to see what my schedule allows, what my bandwidth allows, what my heart wants, and participate as I'm able, and kind of stay in the loop of things. And I just thought, wow, that's a great lesson for the tone, even of how we present things, even in our marriages.
Yes. I think you need to make yourself a note, and you're going to do a blog on this for Key Ministries, being welcomed but not obligated. Those are perfect words for what we're trying to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you don't, I will.
Okay.
All right.
I actually wish my daughter would write it. But
that
she's
would be
so
good.
busy
Actually,
right
our
now,
daughter did
so.
write one.
Yeah.
My oldest daughter is an auditor for the largest public accounting firm in the world.
Wow.
And it's busy season.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
she's a great blogger. So
Uh,
let's see, what else should we talk about? Let's talk for a minute, because I think, well, they kind of go in hand. So let's talk about COVID first. How has COVID impacted your marriage? Would you mind sharing, positively and negatively, maybe?
Honestly, but we tell people all the time is that we don't think it's affected us much at all. I mean, having a special needs child and being retired, our world hasn't changed a whole lot. And so that might not sound really dramatic in any way, and it's not, but it really hasn't really affected us. And so we're thankful for that, and we're healthy. And so for us personally, that's
and the reason is because Joey's always with us. Now, Joey, he worked at a job for 15 years, and long story short, it wasn't working out for the long term. He was doing okay, but he needed to go faster, and Joey has one speed, and it's not fast. And so it's been 4 years now that he's been home,
right,
or three or 4 years. And so that might have made a big difference to us, because I think what a lot of special needs families are dealing with is that their care providers, if they are, out of school, or even if they are in school, the care that they had been given is not the same. They're not being able to, get the same physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapies as they were previous. So I could see that in some marriages really being a big issue. Which, Joey, at the time of him losing his job, he was 35 or 36. So he was already out of the school system kind of things. And so we are not feeling the impact. Perhaps in our marriage, it's affected me more. Joe would be happy to be at home. Perhaps it's affected me more than in that way that, my going out is running errands.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to go out with a friend for lunch, or go for a cup of coffee or something. And some people, I would be more free to do that. And some people are still not leaving their house. So that is just, and I respect that, I'm not going to expect someone to meet my needs in that way. And actually, telephone calls and Zooms and things like that, and FaceTime has kept us in touch with other people. So Yeah.
We live and die by Zoom.
Yeah, right now. I'm sure you do
Yeah.
too, right?
We do a lot of things with Zoom.
Yeah, people who aren't using some tool like Zoom or some alternative are typically not doing so well. And makes me sad when I feel like they're not realizing the power and simplicity, really. I recognize how intimidating it can be, but it's a powerful alternative. It's not, and it's like getting respite, isn't it, for a couple? We'll never get enough. The load you have, the ever-present nature of Joey is something you can never get enough breaks from, but you have to find what an adequate pace of respite is, and then work as creatively and perseveringly as you can to do that. And the same is applied in COVID about our learning, like what is, from a socialization perspective, what are the kinds of socialization? May not be perfect, but what's adequate for now, and be persevering and creative about pacing that so that we can stay sort of not out of our minds, maybe not completely content, but not out of our minds.
Sure. And even for, even for our kids too, but even for us as adults who are much more expressive in terms of being with our friends and that sort of thing, the phone goes two ways.
Yeah.
And most of us have a cell phone that can do FaceTime. Not everybody, but most people do. So anybody who's, if you will, stuck at home and not making any effort to meet with anybody or talk with anybody, it might be your issue. You know what I'm saying? Like you miss your friend or you miss your relative, pick up the phone and give them a call, and don't blame it on them.
Yeah, I'm glad you pointed that out. Initiative can be really hard, and I think special needs families do feel like they have to initiate so much on behalf of their kids that then we get kind of initiative fatigue in the category of all those fatigues we get.
That's right.
And then we sit back like a victim and blame everybody for not reaching out.
Well, and let's just think about this too. Who are you missing because they do fill you up? Like I have a friend that when I talk with her, I never leave feeling depleted. Even if she has a lot of needs just because of where her family is right now, but I never leave that call without her she's always saying, and how are you?
Yeah.
And what can I pray for you? And so I would say, as just sort of a side note, that find the people who fill you, not the ones who are like, taking you down. Find the people who fill you and pursue that, and a little bit less on the people who are taking you down, because we're all this has affected everyone. So none of us can say like, oh, well, it hasn't affected me. In our marriage, it hasn't much because we still were at home. We're retired. We couldn't travel, but we were home. We could go for a walk in our metro parks, which are beautiful. So our situation is a little bit different, but it has affected us too. It's affected everyone. And so look for ways that fill you rather than deplete you. That would be my word on that. Did you have a thought? Yes.
Oh, lots of thoughts, but I think.
Before you start, Joe, I want you to say what you're going to say. Hold the thought. I just wanted to invite anybody who's watching, just make sure they know we're here for questions from you guys too. So we can fill this last 7-8 minutes easily, but jump in and put your comments on Facebook if you want to. I'm trying to watch there and see if anybody, we've got lots of people saying hi. We've got like Alfonso from out in New Jersey, Donna, Sue, Rahel, Claire. We've got people watching, but they're just watching. They apparently don't have questions right now.
Bonzo. Hey, buongiorno, my son.
So go ahead, Joe. What were you going to say?
There's a lot of different directions that I can go here, but I want to make sure I hit what you want to talk about at this point, at this time. So do you have any other issues that topics you want us to talk about before 5 minutes is up here?
Well, I don't necessarily specifically have any, but like you said, we could go a lot of different ways with this, but if you've got something on your heart, you say it.
Yeah, well, Cindi hit a word that I thought was really important to maybe piggyback on it, and that was purpose. And, a lot of people are striving to have healthy good marriages, long-term marriage relationships, but having those expectations about your marriage without having purpose behind your marriage will oftentimes just lead to bitterness and to frustration and ultimately divorce. And so I'm thankful that God has given us a blueprint for building strong marriages. He has given us purpose for our marriage. And just to kind of tie this in, and I can spend the next hour talking about these different purposes, but just to tie it in with what you were talking about before, the importance of how do we leave a legacy for our children. I mean, as you heard Cindi talk, I mean, we have been the recipients of a good legacy from our parents. And we trust that that legacy will be passed on to our children as well. And, and the reality is that our children are messengers that we're going to send to a time that we're never going to see. And so the question becomes, what message are we imparting into their lives? And we want to make sure that that message that we impart to them is framed within the biblical framework of what God wants us to be doing individually and as a couple. And I would say your question that you asked probably maybe a half hour ago of what keeps you going or something like that was very, very profound question. It was very good. But I would say, I think the secret to what God has allowed us to be able to do so that we have a legacy being passed on to our children is that even before we got married, the number one hinge pin question that we had for us before we got married was, will we be more effective together as a married couple or single? And meaning that, will we be able to have a greater impact for God's glory being married together? And we've decided that, yes, thankfully, that was going to be the case. And so we began that as our foundation. And so what we began to do at that point was to build upon that foundation a strong house, if you will, if you have some illustrations here, and a strong home. And for us, our life, the primary ministry that we have is really one of discipleship, disciple making. And so because of that, that really has formed within us, if you will, term I use often is a grid through which we filter life, through which we filter what happens to us, whether it be what we do. Everything is filtered through this grid that we have learned and developed, and the filtering process gets more fine as we were getting older here. But that has helped us to become what we like to term relational thinkers. And relational thinking has to do with relating everything we do, from what we do in our marriage to what we do in raising our children. How is what we're doing going to have a greater eternal significance in life? And so it is, we don't want to make this so spiritual minded that it's no earthly good. The reality is that because of that, we believe that we are more earthly productive with our time and with our children, because we do filter that, the input that we get every day through this grid that has been developed and is still developing with time. And one of the biggest grids as it relates to this topic of marriage
Oh, you froze up for a minute. I hope we get you back. Joe is frozen. So while yeah, he's frozen. So while I hope they will come back, let me just say anyone who's listening, I'm just thankful for them, for Joe saying what he did just now, even because it is so true. I see this in my own family, that the foundational mindset we have matters so much, because there's so many mistakes we make in our marriage and our parenting. There's so many stresses that are created by special needs that that make it very hard for us to live well sometimes. Oh yeah, we lost them altogether. So assuming that they don't come back, I'll just wrap up here. I love Joe's heart. I love Cindy's heart. They have so many practical things in their book to share with us too. So, and they have multiple books. So in the show notes, you're going to see places that you can connect with them, and truly, they are among the most practical writers. So don't be misled by this, like he said, this super spiritual sounding foundation he's describing, because while that is what they filter everything through, they also are a wealth of wisdom on very practical things that can be done. Oh, it looks like they think they got it knocked off. They got knocked off. So let me see. I'm just going to wrap up without them, because I don't want to distract you guys with my. Good thing for multiple devices where we can communicate. So folks, thanks for your patience here while we had a little technological blip. Fortunately, we were just wrapping up, but so reach out to them. Like I said, in the show notes, we'll have more information from them. Also, you can subscribe to the Walk Right In Ministries newsletters and blog to get updates and to get the link for the full broadcast today. We also have something coming up I want to make sure we share here before we wrap up, because a couple things. One is we have Reach Night coming March 5th. The save the date just went out on social media yesterday, and it's kind of mysterious and fun because that's what you do, right? But there's lots more information coming about that in the next couple of days and in the weeks coming. It's really, we're really excited about it. I won't say a whole lot more now, but we've got some music and stories and sweet surprises. It's just going to be a really fun night. Reach Night, March 5th, live on Facebook at 7 p.m. Central Time. So mark your calendar and then watch for more information about that. We will be having another Real Talk in March. We usually do them on Thursdays at noon, and often the second or third Thursday of the month. We don't have a date set yet for March, and we've got a couple of guests in the wings, including Lamar Hardwick, who's going to join us sometime soon. He's in treatment for cancer and doing well, but as many of you can appreciate, that has been hard on him. He also, his book, Disability and the Church, no, oh, I should know. Yeah, Disability and Inclusion in the Church. All of a sudden, I can't think of the name, and I had it laying here. But he is going to come and talk about his new book that just released on Tuesday this week. It's already a top seller, so go on Amazon and look up Lamar Hardwick. He's a pastor who also has autism. Incredible wisdom. So we're excited about what's coming up. We also have a couple of ideas, talking with some other moms about a couple mom subjects. Here's Cindi. She's going to come back in and I'll get a chance to say goodbye. We'll bring them on in one more time before we wrap up. Hey there. I'm just giving everybody information about the show notes so we can wrap up with a prayer. But before we do, I want to make sure you don't have any final things to say. And I want to say we're all really excited for you with the new baby coming. We literally didn't know if we'd be able to go live today if Kathleen had her baby. So thank you, Jesus, that we got to do this. And now any minute is fine.
That's right. She didn't, and she texted, but it wasn't about that.
Oh, okay. You know, it might have been the text that knocks you off. That's happened to me before.
Okay. I had more, but I did have more than just that.
Oh, okay.
So I don't think so,
Okay.
but it's okay. I'm sorry that what happened. I don't know what happened, but I would have one thing to add. Did you?
Go ahead.
Where did we get cut off?
Just the idea that we're entering into a covenant relationship, and I think many times where marriages fail, especially when it comes to having marriages with special needs children, is that, you came into this marriage situation thinking, contractually, you're entering into a contract rather than entering into a covenant. and because of that, when things don't go according to your plan, your marriage is more prone to fail at that point, because again, it's not part of your blueprint, it's not part of your game plan that you had in place. And your thinking is, if you're thinking contractually, is that you got it into marriage because that other person is going to make you happy. And if you enter into marriage with that type of a mindset, you're heading for trouble, because thinking and expecting people to make you happy as their goal in life is just not a reality. And if you go into your marriage thinking that God brought you together for His purpose, and whatever comes your way, it is still according to His purpose, and that covenant doesn't change.
Yeah. Thank you for speaking that. Hope.
And I would just add, while we have been talking mostly about marriage because that's where we speak from, I would like to say that all of these things can be taken with just a little bit of effort by a single parent. Because really what I think we've shared is our purpose, family meetings, and you can do that by yourself, with just your children. Is it more effort? Yes. Is it harder? Yes. Would I want to be alone in this journey? No. But we know sometimes a spouse will bail because it's just too hard, or other reasons. But the goal should be, as a parent, to just try to live this life with no regrets. What is the best that you can do? We're all going to fail. We've made mistakes with our kids. We've had to apologize, as we said earlier. And yet, if you are a single parent, I feel like a lot of what we had to say would still apply to you. You're just going to have to just think a bit differently to make it applicable specifically to you.
It's good.
Yep. Well, isn't it true that we all grow up with our own baggage? Our kids are going to grow up with theirs. We can't avoid all of it. We'll avoid as much as we can.
Right.
But if the overarching tone is, I know above all else I was loved. My parents didn't do everything right. My spouse didn't always love me the way I wished they would. Sometimes my marriage was disappointing, but I know at his core or her core, she loved me, he loved me. And then, like you've both pointed to the Lord, we say, you know what, ultimately, when it seems hopeless, and I've had storms in my own marriage where I felt like, okay, I'll commit to the covenant, but I don't know that there will ever be much to this. That's very satisfying, but I'm going to do it for the kids, or I'm going to do it because I'm committed to the Lord's commitment about it, whatever. And God showed me what a lie that was, because nothing is too far from His reach. He created the entire world with nothing but His word. He doesn't need any spark to start with, to build from in our marriage. He doesn't need anything to rebuild from. He's got everything He needs to start our marriage all anew at any moment, whenever we're ready. So we just have to live under that covenant, right? Under that understanding that it's love, and that the legacy we want to pass ultimately to our kids is not having a perfect parent or growing up in a marriage, under a marriage that was perfect, but a marriage that was bound in this love.
That's right.
That we first come from Father, and ultimately flavors everything we are and who we are and what we do.
Absolutely.
I call it an umbrella of protection that God just
is.
genuinely provides us as we enter into this covenant relationship. And if you step outside that boundaries of that covenant, of that umbrella, that's where trouble lies. And so you need to understand what are those parameters to which we've been called to in marriage. And again, so grateful that God has clearly provided that blueprint for us in His word.
Jesus said, in this world you will have trouble. Not you might.
You will.
It's a given.
Put our trust in Him. We just keep coming back there, right? And know He loves us. He loved us when we were awful. He loves us when we're good. He just loves us. And
maybe just one more word, there's going to be parents out there, whether they're married or single parents, that will think, I don't know what's going to happen to my child when I'm gone. I just want to give the encouragement. And as you said, when we use the Bible as our foundation, we know that God will see us through things. And maybe somebody who's listening has a little child that's 3 years old, and you're not seeing your way out of today for anything. And I just want to encourage you that as you watch God get you to tomorrow, you will build upon the things that he has done for you and for your child, that when your child gets to be 40 years old, I don't have a worry, because the children have said they will take care of their brother. And we've expressed things to them that will help that take place. Will that be for everyone who's listening? No, it will be different. But the point is that God builds the faith that you have, the confidence that you have in him, and how he sees things through, that he will take care of your child even when you're not here. And we have provided in different ways for people that have special needs, than they're 40 and 50 and 60 years old, maybe in just one thing we did. And when we've done it, I've thought, someday I hope there's someone who what I just did for this person will do for my Joey. I know God will do that. I know he will. And so I don't have to fret about what those days will bring. So use these early days of raising your child to watch for those opportunities when he's met a need and you're like, oh my gosh, like, thank you, Lord, that happened. And I know now that you're going to not only take care of him or her today, but you will later on too.
Yeah.
There's a stepping stone.
Amen.
Yeah, good. You guys, I enjoy you so much. I admire and appreciate you. I've learned from you. I keep telling my girls, whenever you want to talk to another sister who's just about 10 years ahead, talk to those girls, because I think they're amazing. You have beautiful girls. I've met them both, and I've not yet met Joey, but I feel like I know him from things you share. I just thank you guys for sharing your story, for being vulnerable, for your wisdom, for just your attentiveness to do life the way that you do, and to be willing to share it. I know it's been a sacrificial life for you and your kids at times, but I know it's a joy to you, and I know it greatly honors God. So I really appreciate that. I appreciate your spending time with us today. It was really, really great. I think really encouraging for a lot of people. I'm getting like all those little heart things on Facebook over here. Couple of people said, I just found by accident. So go find their books. Like I said, they're in the show notes. Their Facebook page is called My Marriage Matters. Cindi with an I, cindiferrini.com. You can go find a lot more. We also put a blog out here on the Walk Right in Ministries blog page earlier this week, or last week, I guess, on the 8 marriage strengthening practices for couples parenting a child with special needs. So if you want some quick points to focus, they line right up with what you were talking about here today, especially at the end here, Joe. So not to be too super spiritual, but if we want to, sometimes we just have to kind of go to the basic principles and quit focusing on the minutia, so the principles feel a little heady at times, but that's where we go to get anchored, and then all the minutia falls into place. So that's what that blog was kind of helping to get to. So again, thank you guys so much. Joe, I'm going to put you on the spot, but would you mind closing us in prayer?
Oh, we'd love to do that. You bet.
Thank you.
Father, we're thankful that we can come before you now, and we just are thankful, Father, that you love us and that you care for us, and that, Father, you would desire that we would raise our children according to your plan and purposes. And we would ask, Father, that you would grant us continued wisdom in how we do that as parenting, but we ask you also for wisdom in how we should continue to pursue oneness in our marriage relationship. And so, Father, we pray that this time has been a time that has brought glory to your name, that the name of Jesus has been exalted. And again, thank you for Lisa and her ministry, and just her willingness, Father, to serve you and to serve others as well. And again, thank you for this time. We pray this all in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Lisa, thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisa.
We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys. Thank you, everybody who tuned in today. We just it's a great time. So post your questions for things coming up, and we'll see you again soon on Real Talk Livestream.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Bye-bye.
All right, let's see. Hang on, I gotta stop the live.